Well, good morning. My name is Sarah Steiner, and I serve as the Director of Connections here at Lawrenceville First. And I just want to say welcome. It is a pleasure to be with you this morning, whether you're joining us in person or online. Welcome. We're so excited to have you here with us. I've only preached a few times before, and you guys haven't been mad about it, so I got asked back. So if you're mad about this one, talk to the bald man. That's all I have to say about that. But anyway, truly, it's great to be with you this morning. I'm super excited about this opportunity. Well, you might be this kind of person, or you may know this kind of person, but there's a few of us in the world who just sort of hold on to the clothes that we have. And what I mean by this is that they could have a lot of holes in them, and they could be falling off of us in weird ways, but they're broken in. What can I say? Like, they fit perfect. I know what I'm getting myself into when I put this holy shirt on, and I'm going to wear it, and it's going to follow me. And I'm one of those people. Do we have anyone like that? You just kind of hold on to it? It should be of note that it's mostly men raising their hand. I don't know what that says about me, but I'll leave that as it is. I just tend to sort of hold on. I just don't care. It's not that I don't mind new clothes. I just don't care to get new clothes. Most of my clothes consist of the tables at Costco and Sam's. And I'm not there for the clothes. I'm there for something else, and I pass by the table, and I'm like, oh, okay, that'll be nice. I'll throw that. I'm pretty sure these pants are Costco, if I'm being honest. And so, but that's just me. I just tend to just be like, okay, I just don't care. I'll wear something to death, if you will. But I'm also the type of person that has the box of T-shirts from like a bajillion years ago that I can't quite get rid of. You know what I mean? Some of you. It's the box that you just kind of care. My husband and I have moved 12 times, and this box has gone with us. And I mean literally across the country. We have moved across the country, and the box of T-shirts that are mine have made it through all of those parts of the world. And they're just like the special ones, the ones I got for doing this thing or this cool event, and I just can't get rid of them. They mean something to me. I love this box of T-shirts. I know what you're thinking. Sarah, do the T-shirt quilt. I will eventually, but I just haven't gotten there yet. Right now, they live in the box, and I'm fine with the box. My husband's not fine with the box, but that's okay. The box is mine, and I keep my box. In today's passage, we're going to be talking a little bit about a shirt, and Jesus might ask us to give up our favorite shirt. So just be prepared for that. We've been going through this series called You Have Heard It Said, and we're sort of walking through a little bit of chapter 5 of the Sermon on the Mount. And today our passage is going to come from chapter 5, verses 38 through 42, and this is what it says. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, give your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go a mile, go also the second. Give to the one who asks of you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. Now, before we start sort of breaking down this passage, we need to set the scene just a little bit. So this is the Sermon on the Mount. And if you paid attention a little bit before in Matthew, you'll notice Jesus hasn't said a whole lot up until this point. If you got one of those red letter Bibles, you know that it's pretty not read at that point. So this is sort of Jesus's first introduction to himself and why he has come. And the reason he has come, that he is going to tell us, is because the kingdom of heaven is here. He has brought this kingdom of heaven on earth, and he has inaugurated the kingdom of heaven. And that's sort of Jesus's main point throughout this sermon, is that the kingdom of heaven is here, and this kingdom is an upside down kingdom. Now, when we say that the kingdom of heaven is an upside down kingdom, this is what we sort of mean by that. And we live in a world that tells you you deserve the best thing, you deserve more, you should treat yourself, if you will. And the upside down kingdom is going to tell us, no, you should be giving and serving and leading with grace and love. And so sort of this idea of you have heard it said comes from this, where the world tells you this, but I tell you something different. And so the point of this upside down kingdom is for us to reflect the image of God back to others so that they see God's image in us and they know that we are seeking the will of the Lord and not our own will. And it's sort of in this vein that we find ourselves at this particular section of the Sermon on the Mount. Excuse me. So we're just going to go verse by verse here and kind of talk through what Jesus means by this. So verse 38 starts with this. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now, Jesus is quoting what would have been a popular phrase back in the time of this Roman and Jewish empire. And this sort of eye for an eye thing literally means lex talionis. That's the, I think, Latin for it. Sorry, guys. That's the Latin for it there. And it translates literally eye for an eye. Now, the Jewish community, you can find this in Deuteronomy, and I think it's also quoted in Exodus, had a similar phrase. Well, the Roman Empire also had a similar law that was literally eye for an eye. And what it meant was that you could only wrong someone to the extent that they had wronged you. There was this interesting study done in which they had two people. One person would hit the other person on the thumb. And then both people would scale how hard they think they were either hit or they hit the person. Now, you can imagine what would happen, right? The person who's hitting someone on the thumb would think that they didn't hit them very hard. So they would scale between like 5 to 1 on the lower end of the scale. Well, the one being hit obviously did not have an interpretation of that, and they would scale 5 and above. They were on the upper end of this scale. And so from the very beginning here, you see the purpose of this law. And it's not that when we're wronged, I feel the need to wrong someone more than they wronged me, but our ideas of equal are all of a sudden skewed. We are no longer talking about the same thing. Fairness is no longer a definition that we both hold to, the one who wronged me and then my retaliation on this. And so that's sort of the law. The law was the limit. It was meant to prevent endless cycles of vengeance. It was sort of God's way of saying your retaliation can only go so far. If someone knocks your tooth out, you could not ask for all of their teeth in return. You only got one tooth back. And that was the point of this, that this sort of endless cycle would stop. Now, we also need to sort of figure out who Jesus is talking to when he's talking to this Sermon on the Mount. And he's talking to his Jewish community. And Jews were under a Roman occupation at this time. And so from the very beginning, under this occupation, the Jews were at the bottom of this social ladder. They did not have any power at all within this community. And so even though Rome had an eye for an eye law, that did not mean that the Jews got equal weight within the justice system. Their cases were overlooked, ignored, or their outcomes were simply just unjust. And so you can see where retaliation is sort of a hot topic, and it was a hot topic at this time. Jewish leaders were arguing amongst themselves about what does it look like for us to get justice in this world. If the Roman Empire won't give it to us, we will take it into our own hands. How can we find justice in our own hands? And this is directly what Jesus is addressing. This concern here is directly what he is addressing. And he does so by giving 3 examples of this. Now, remember, he's speaking to first century Jews, so those examples would have made sense to them. They're not going to make a lot of sense to us, but if you'll bear with me, we'll walk through these together and kind of get an idea of what Jesus is talking about. So our first example comes in verse 39. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. Right off the bat, people are beating each other up. That happens today. You know, I mean, I'm not going to lie. He beat my brothers up all the time. And this happened back then as well, you know, but in my defense, I was striking back. They struck me first. This is what's happening here as well. Now, what we need to realize is what Jesus is really referring to is the visual of this isn't just like punching each other like we might think. This was one of those backhanded slap across the face situations. Now, I don't know if you've ever been hit in the face. It doesn't feel very good. And I can imagine being slapped across the face hurt pretty bad. But if you're sort of backhandedly slapped, The real pain is the shame and humiliation that comes with that, right? You're at the bottom of the social ladder. Someone above you comes across and just backhanded slaps you. That is humiliating. And that's what Jesus is addressing. The Jews were going through this. They were feeling this sort of humiliation. And so what better justice is there in that moment than when you're backhanded slap than to just rear back and hit somebody? Right? Like, I mean, I would want to do that. Mike Tyson has this fun saying that, like, everyone has a plan until you're hit in the face, right? Like, you've got a plan. I'm not going to hit people, but if you slap me in the face, I might actually hit you back. I mean, my plan's out the window at that point. Of course I'm going to hit you back. You hit me in the face. And I think that's sort of the point here, is that you want to be sort of hit in the face and you want to hit people back. And so, but Jesus is inviting us to more. And what's really interesting is, of course, Jesus doesn't tell us, hey, hit them back if they hit you. But he also doesn't tell us to just walk away. My mom was that way. Just walk away. Just don't engage. I don't know why you always have to hit your brother's back. Just walk away. That was what I heard all the time. But Jesus doesn't even tell us to do that. No, instead, he tells us to stand there and get hit again. At what point does that make any sense? But this is the upside down kingdom. This is in a world that would shout from the crowd, hit him back. Jesus says, let them hit you again. And I think the visual here is important. If you're sort of backhandedly slapped, you turn your face away from the one who has hit you. And Jesus has said, turn the other cheek. Now I have to be hit from the other side. And if you're going to hit me from the other side, you have to do it with an open hand. This is no longer a backhanded slap. You have to just hit me with an open hand. And that is the visual that Jesus is referencing here in this part. And that is how we invite them into the upside down kingdom. If I turn my face back to them, I am forcing them to see the image of God in me. I'm forcing them to see me in my full humanity. If you're going to hit me, you're going to hit me looking directly at my face. If the upside down kingdom was meant for us to reflect God's image to others, here we have sort of a striking example of this. You are forcing the one who has wronged you to look you directly in the face, to see you and your full humanity, and invite them to participate in the upside down kingdom by not hitting you in return. And this is sort of the thread that we'll see woven throughout this passage, that when we stand there and let people see God's image in us, we are inviting them in to this upside down kingdom. So that's example number one. And Jesus continues with a second example. He says this in verse 40. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, give your coat as well. Now, I don't know about you, but apparently back in this time, people would sue each other for their clothes. That doesn't make much sense to me now. I'd sue you for your house now, but I guess the shirt was of, a big importance there. But we have a couple of images here of what those clothes would look like. And so you've seen these before, right? Like this is a first century little outfit here. They're throwing a fit. That's a young people phrase, and I butchered it and they won't say it anymore. And so now I'm embarrassed and so are they. But this is a first century outfit. You see here the long sort of dress on the very end here. That was the shirt part. That's the tunic. That's the shirt that guy would have been suing for. And then you see they have a couple different variations of wearing a coat on top of that. What is also of note is that back in the first century, dads were still rocking socks and sandals. So dads who do that now, you're just carrying on a great tradition. Thank you. So that is, as you see that. We also have one more here. That's our chill first century guy. Look, he's like, man, no problem. You want my shirt? Have my shirt. Don't worry about it. I got another shirt at home. You can have my shirt. Matter of fact, you can have my coat too. Now, when Jesus is speaking to these people, he's, again, talking to this Jewish community and the poor of this community. And really and truly, the coat was of huge importance during this time. So if you're going out into the market and you forget your money at home, you could use your coat as a pledge that you would bring that money later on. So you'd hand them your coat, say, hey, here, hold on to this. I'll bring my money later. But there was also a law that said you had to return that coat to its rightful owner before sundown. And the reason was because the coat was most often the way in which the poor would keep themselves warm at night. That was the only way they could do it. So you couldn't hold on to the coat indefinitely until they brought your money. You had to return it at sundown. And if you're like our first century guy here and they're suing you for your shirt and you give them your coat, you're left in nothing but your loincloth. Right? What else is he wearing? Nothing but a shirt and a loincloth. You might even be naked standing there at the altar, at the case, in court. And I think that's actually the point Jesus is making, as weird as that sounds. I sort of think that's the point. In the same way that turning the other cheek forces them to see the image of God in you, so does this. If you are poor and someone sues you for your shirt and you also give them your coat, you are left with nothing to keep yourself warm at night. And now the community sees the guy who wanted your shirt and is like, oh, that's that guy that took that poor guy's shirt and coat, right? And this is forcing them to see the image of God in you, to see you in your full humanity. The retaliation here is not about suing them in return. It's not about getting even, but it is about giving and giving generously. And that is inviting people into the upside down kingdom. By instead of the retaliation of getting even, it's giving and serving. And this is the invitation that Jesus invites us into. Jesus' final example is found in verse 41. And it says this: if anyone forces you to go a mile, go also with them a second. Again, there's a little bit of backstory here for us who are not living in the first century to sort of know what Jesus is referring to. And in this day and time, the Roman soldiers could force you to carry items for them for up to a mile. You couldn't say no. If you were on your way to the market, you had to go run some supplies, and you passed by a Roman soldier and he says, hey, carry my pack for me for a mile. You had no choice in the matter. You had to carry the pack for a mile. But there was also law that said you could only go up to a mile. They couldn't make you go 2 miles. Somewhere, Adam's eye is twitching because he really wants to tell us about how his workout group wears weighted vests when they run. And this is the same thing as carrying the Romans' pack. I really think he wants to tell us about it. Somewhere his eye's twitching. But the law stated that you could only make them go up to a mile. You couldn't make them do 2 miles. And so, once again, by going this second mile, you're showing the soldier that has forced you to do this the image of God in you, right? Instead of begrudgingly and complaining and being annoyed by having to go a mile, you are willingly going the extra mile with them. And it's possible that when you got to your destination, the superiors of this soldier would have gotten in trouble because he made you go 2 miles. But it's like, no, I didn't make him go. He chose to go himself. This is the invitation into the upside down kingdom. That our retaliation and our justice is about reflecting God's image back to others. Instead of complaining and being annoyed, we say, no, I'm going to go the second mile with you. And what better opportunity to have a conversation with a soldier than to go an extra mile with them? Now, I have mentioned this before, but I grew up in a Christian home. I graciously grew up in a Christian home, and my mom and my dad, but they really were insistent on us knowing Bible stories and knowing scripture. And my mom would quote this passage to us all the time. And like I said, she would always tell us to turn the other cheek. And it was because my brothers and I would beat each other up. And if no one turned the other cheek, then it was just this endless cycle of beating each other up, which it was mostly an endless cycle of beating each other up. But she would quote this passage to us all the time. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. Someone told me the other day that every time I preach, I'd have a brother story. This is another one, mainly because my brothers and I were fools, and we did dumb things, and you should know about them. But anyway, one time, this is a cringy story. I'm really sorry. So if you're like squeamish around cringy stories, just don't make eye contact with me for a few minutes. I'm sorry. I know how it goes. You can't look at people when they're telling a really cringy story. I get it. So I'm just warning you. So one time I grew up in the country. I didn't live in a neighborhood, so I didn't really have like neighborhood friends or anything. But finally, this family moved in next door to us. And there was 3 of them, and they were all almost exactly the same age as us, and we were super excited. We finally had neighborhood kids to play with. Now, my mom made sure that we knew that this was not a Christian family and that we needed to be good Christian neighbors to this family, and we needed to share the love of Christ with them. So early on, and they're sort of moving in next door, they came over and jumped on the trampoline. Now, there's 6 of us jumping on a trampoline. It was probably way too many, but who cares? Now, my youngest brother, had a tendency of when he would get really excited, he would hit you. Y'all know people like this. I couldn't fully grasp it, but he just loved to hit people. He really did. And mostly it was us. But he decided today he was going to take out that excitement on one of our new friends. So he hits this new girl. This isn't even the cringy part. She exclaims loudly, as she should, "Oh my gosh, your brother just hit me." I love the Lord, and I wanted her to love the Lord. So I told her, "You should turn over and let him do the other side." I know. I don't think I fully understood what Jesus was asking us to do. In my mind, this is how it worked. You turn over, you let him do the other side. Now, she had a fair response to this. Why would I do that? Why would you do that? That makes no sense. But of course, I wasn't one to give up a point, and I doubled down and said, well, that's what Jesus asked us to do. Like, that was like the bottom line, right? Like, if Jesus asked you to do it, you just did it. Don't ask questions about it. So that went well. But anyway, I think there's actually a little bit of truth to her response. She was really fair in what she asked. Why would you do this? How does it make sense to turn the other cheek, give someone your coat when they already took your shirt, and go another mile with them? How does this work? Why do we care to do this? Now, we live in a world that sort of makes light of pettiness, right? It's kind of cute or funny to be petty. Like the old, I hear people say all the time, hey, don't mess with me, I'm petty. And it's sort of a way of saying, like, I'm going to get back at you if you get at me, right? Like, don't mess with me, I'm a petty person. Or we're someone who has to die on the hill of the principle of the matter. It's not about the $3 coupon. It's the principle of the matter, right? Like, my mom was a principle of the matter person, and she would argue to the death of someone about the principle. I can afford the $3, but it says it's supposed to work. So, like, the principle here is that it should work. So, right, we die on this hill of the principle of the matter. Now, we constantly see injustices around us. Big ones, really big ones, and small ones, too. I, too, get super annoyed when someone cuts me off in traffic. Like, how dare you think that I also wasn't going the same way, and therefore you needed that spot before I got there? Like, you had to cut in front of me before I got there. If you're like me, hopefully you're not, if you're like me and you get cut off in traffic, you have to follow them, not closely, but keep up. Because when you get to the red light and you sit at the red light, you have to do one of these. Right? What? And I know what you all thought. I was going to give a particular finger. The altar's open for those of you who thought that. I don't give them the finger. I don't roll the window down and yell at them. But I have to look. Number one, I have to know what kind of person cuts someone off in traffic looks like. You just have to know. Even though they all look different, everyone does this. But it just seems like I need to know what they look like. But number two, I have to let them know that I know, that they know, that I know that they cut me off in traffic. I made sure I kept up with you so that I could be like, and of course they're doing one of these, right? Looking in the mirror on their phone. They're not looking over one, but they know what they did. They're not looking over. I do that too. I've cut people off. They get up beside you and you have to look the other way. You can't make eye contact with them. But you have to look and see. Now, I want to be clear. Jesus is not telling us to not be people of justice. He is a just and right God. And there will be complete justice one day. And he's inviting us to participate in justice here and now. But what he is asking us to do and telling us not to do is to not let our ego get in the way of showing grace and love towards others. The kingdom of heaven is a kingdom that serves first and foremost. This is how we reflect God's image to others. The beauty of this upside down kingdom that Jesus inaugurates with this sermon is that Jesus does not ask us to do anything that he himself did not also do. He was mocked, and he said nothing back. He was challenged by the Sadducees and Pharisees, and instead of yelling back or arguing with them, he diverted their anger by telling stories and parables, often with funny angles. When they hit him, he absorbed their pain. When they hung him on a cross, he prayed for them. Living in this day and time is hard and heavy, and we see retaliation and pettiness all around us, all the time. And when big injustices happen and we feel we have no control of helping that injustice, what do? We find ourselves seeking justice for ourselves and the little ones. I have to take this on myself. I can't help with this big thing, but I will find this small way of getting back at this person over this small petty matter. But if we are to reflect God's image in this upside down kingdom, we must be people who are the very peace we want to see in the world. Martin Luther King Jr. once said this: "One day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal we seek, but it is the means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means." The peace we want to see in the world starts with us. So let's not be people who are caught up being petty or arguing for the sake of the principle of the matter. Let's not chase down the car just to stare at them, but instead, let's lead with love and generosity. Will you live by the world's principles of getting even, or will you embrace the upside down kingdom and let God's image shine through you? We are to be people that let the grace of God go before us so that we can turn the other cheek, give up our coat, and go the extra mile.